We begin this edition in Moldova, where polls have opened in parliamentary elections that could see the country abandon its shift toward the West. The ruling pro-European PAS party of Maria Sandu is facing serious challenges from pro-Russian and less pro-Western opposition parties and could lose its majority in parliament. Moldova, a former Soviet republic, borders Ukraine and applied for EU membership in the wake of Russia's invasion. The elections are being closely watched in Europe, and there are concerns of Russian interference. For more, let's cross to our correspondent, Maria Gerth-Niculescu, who's in the Moldovan capital. Maria, tell us more about this election and what's at stake today.
Polls opened at 7 a.m. local time this morning. People are starting to slowly arrive to cast their ballot. As you can see behind me, things are still quite slow and quiet because it is still relatively early. In any case, the stakes in this election, and every Moldovan knows this, are mainly geopolitical. A choice between the pro-European PAS party of President Maria Sandu, which currently holds the absolute majority in parliament, and their main contender in this election is the Patriotic Bloc. This is a bloc formed of three parties traditionally aligned on with Russian values, with Russian narratives. Just to give you an example, they are advocating for closer ties with Russia, for example, to import Russian gas again. Moldova used to be heavily reliant on Russian gas in the past, but Russia has used this as a leverage and as a blackmail for Moldovan politicians and for the population. So it is now importing most of its gas from Europe. Just to give you an example of one of those major campaign topics that we've seen here over the past months in Moldova. In any case, it will be very difficult for any party or electoral bloc to reach the absolute majority. At this time, the PAS, the pro-European party, is heavily relying on the diaspora. About 20% of Moldovans are voting from the diaspora, and they're usually more aligned with European values. If no party reaches the absolute majority, then in any case, alliances will need to be formed. But we are quite in the dark as to how this could look yet, so we'll have to wait for the results to know more.
And Maria, Moldovan authorities have denounced Russian interference during the campaign. Tell us more about that and what's been going on.
Moldovan authorities, but experts, investigative journalists have all denounced massive Russian interference in order to influence this election. This has taken various forms. For example, massive disinformation campaigns, coordinated campaigns on TikTok to trick the algorithm and advocate messages criticizing Maria Sandu, a lot of fake news about what the EU is, what it would mean for Moldova. There's also been a lot of voter attempts to vote bribing, as we've also seen during the presidential election last year. There have been cyber attacks. Russian networks have paid people to attend protests, and the list goes on. One police official told me recently that Russia invested over 300 million euros in this interference campaign for the election. But of course, authorities have taken action. The police has been doing home searches, arresting people over the past months in order to curb this interference and to hold people accountable for it.
All right, Maria, thank you for those updates. We'll be crossing back to you throughout the day as we continue to follow this vote. That's our correspondent, Maria Gerth-Niculescu, reporting there from the Moldovan capital.